Golden and azure hues from the rising sun illuminated the Pacific as Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen positioned herself on the USS Defender's command deck. The enormous destroyer sliced through peaceful waters. Her black hair was secured in a military regulation style, while her uniform displayed the sharp creases characteristic of someone dedicated to military excellence. Despite being only 32 years old, she had garnered more admiration than many officers with twice her experience. Most crew members remained unaware of her existence before naval service. 200 nautical miles from California's shoreline, the vessel conducted standard training operations. Close to 300 naval personnel executed their responsibilities with practiced competence, from engineering compartments in the vessel's depths to surveillance stations at elevated positions. 6 months prior, Sarah received her appointment as the vessel's communications coordinator. During this period, she had revolutionized their radio infrastructure and crisis response procedures. Her technical expertise appeared innate, although she seldom discussed the origins of her sophisticated capabilities. Petty Officer Martinez greeted her that morning, approaching her duty station. He mentioned detecting abnormal data from their extended-range communications equipment. Nothing critical, but information worth bringing to her attention. Sarah acknowledged his concern and accompanied him to the communications hub. Electronic machinery filled the space with a steady hum, while monitors showed data ranging from meteorological information to orbital transmissions. She analyzed the data Martinez had highlighted, her trained perception rapidly detecting anomalies others would overlook. The signal disruption they were measuring did seem peculiar. She directed him to perform comprehensive diagnostics on array segments 4 through 7 and retrieve weather forecasts for the following 6 hours, stating that something felt wrong. While Martinez initiated his tasks, Sarah exited to the outer deck. The sea appeared tranquil, yet she had developed confidence in her intuition. Throughout her pre-military years, these gut feelings had preserved her safety in circumstances beyond most people's comprehension. The breeze carried an unusual electrical quality, and the distant flight patterns of seabirds indicated approaching weather shifts. Captain Williams exited his quarters and joined Sarah. This experienced officer in his 50s had graying hair at his temples and carried himself with the assurance of someone accustomed to navigating hazardous seas. He had rapidly recognized the value of Sarah's observations, despite not always grasping the source of her expertise. He requested her evaluation as he stood beside her at the ship's edge. Sarah expressed her belief that conditions were developing, noting that atmospheric data suggested they faced more than a simple weather system. The electromagnetic disruption differed from anything typical in standard weather-related patterns. Captain Williams examined her expression carefully. Sarah Chen possessed an ability to identify issues before they escalated into emergencies, and he had discovered the wisdom in heeding her alerts. He inquired about her recommendation. She requested permission to conduct extensive diagnostic procedures on all essential systems, communications, navigation, and propulsion controls. She explained that if unusual electromagnetic activity was imminent, she wanted assurance their equipment would remain functional. The captain granted approval and instructed her to compile a status assessment for fleet headquarters, noting that if this situation exceeded a regional weather occurrence, command needed notification without delay. Returning to the communications hub, Sarah couldn't dismiss her sense that they were approaching something major. Her professional preparation prompted her to ready herself for various scenarios, yet her instincts indicated this might surpass anything the personnel had previously encountered. An hour afterward, the ship's second-in-command, Commander Davis, arrived at her work area. Davis had a reputation for meticulousness and doubt, characteristics that enhanced his effectiveness but occasionally made collaboration challenging. He had never fully accepted Sarah, possibly detecting that she concealed portions of her history. He asked her to clarify why she had assigned half the personnel to perform diagnostic checks. Sarah glanced up from her displays where she monitored numerous system outputs concurrently. She informed him they were measuring unusual electromagnetic signatures and believed it wise to confirm their systems had adequate protection before conditions might deteriorate. Davis questioned her assessment, leaning forward to review her information. He noted the patterns didn't correspond to any meteorological service forecasts he had examined, and asked what led her to believe this exceeded routine interference. Sarah paused momentarily. The reality was that these signatures resembled ones she had observed during her former profession when she handled experimental equipment that few individuals knew existed. However, revealing this would require disclosing elements of her background she lacked authorization to discuss. She explained that the frequency characteristics and power levels fell outside typical parameters, and combined with atmospheric pressure variations, suggested they might face an atypical electromagnetic occurrence. Davis maintained his skepticism, but before further discussion could occur, warning systems activated across the vessel. The battle station's alarm sent personnel rushing to their positions as the ship's announcement system came alive. The captain's voice instructed all personnel to report, stating they were experiencing numerous system malfunctions throughout multiple sections and requesting all section leaders report to the command deck without delay. Sarah's pulse quickened, yet her preparation engaged instinctively. She rapidly secured her equipment and proceeded toward the command deck, her thoughts already processing crisis protocols. Traversing the ship's passages, she observed personnel operating urgently at different stations, their expressions displaying the measured anxiety of trained professionals confronting an unforeseen emergency. Activity filled the command deck upon her arrival. Officers announced status reports from various positions, while Captain Williams stood centrally, attempting to manage responses to several concurrent issues. The engineering representative announced loss of main power connection and stated they operated on reserve systems that wouldn't sustain indefinitely. The navigation specialist added that positioning systems displayed irregular data, GPS proved unreliable, and their magnetic compass behaved erratically. Martinez reported that contact with Fleet Command had ceased, noting short-distance radio remained operational, while all extended-distance communications produced only interference. Captain Williams addressed Sarah, acknowledging her prediction and requesting an explanation of their situation. Sarah approached the primary communications terminal and began swiftly examining various systems, her movements across the interface displaying the proficiency of someone who comprehended the equipment at a foundational level. Her findings validated her gravest concerns. She informed the captain they were undergoing what seemed to be an extensive electromagnetic pulse occurrence, though its behavior didn't match anything in their reference materials. The characteristics indicated it was amplifying in power rather than diminishing. Commander Davis questioned whether this could represent some form of weaponry. Sarah considered this improbable, explaining the profile was excessively widespread and unfocused. This appeared to be a natural event, though one considerably more powerful than anything their equipment was engineered to withstand. As though confirming her statement, additional warnings sounded. illumination wavered and multiple displays went blank before backup power restored them. Through the command deck viewports, they observed peculiar luminous phenomena beginning to manifest in the atmosphere. Aurora resembling effects that shouldn't appear at their geographical position during daytime. The radar specialist called out that he was detecting several aircraft approaching from the eastern direction. They seemed to be military vessels, though clear identification proved impossible due to electromagnetic disruption. Captain Williams used his field glasses to scan the skyline. Shortly, he could distinguish the characteristic silhouettes of two F-22 Raptors approaching their position. The sophisticated stealth aircraft flew in coordinated formation, their appearance indicating that whatever was transpiring warranted Air Force participation. The captain ordered an attempt to establish radio communication with the aircraft. Sarah operated the communications equipment, modifying frequencies and transmission strength to penetrate the interference. Following multiple efforts, she succeeded in establishing a static-filled connection. She identified their vessel and requested the unidentified aircraft identify themselves and explain their purpose. The reply arrived laden with static but comprehensible, identifying themselves as Falcon Flight, two F-22 Raptors from Edwards Air Force Base, deployed to evaluate the electromagnetic disturbance in their vicinity. They requested authorization to coordinate air-to-ship operations. Captain Williams accepted the microphone, granting permission and explaining they were encountering multiple system breakdowns due to what seemed an intense electromagnetic phenomenon. The Falcon flight leader acknowledged, confirming they observed identical conditions at altitude. Their instrumentation was malfunctioning and they struggled maintaining steady flight control systems, noting this event exceeded command's expectations. As the F-22s circled overhead, conditions aboard the vessel continued declining. Additional systems failed, and personnel were stretched to their capacity, attempting to sustain fundamental operations. Sarah found herself transitioning between various stations, applying her expertise to assist teams in diagnosing and circumventing malfunctioning equipment. Captain Williams requested her candid evaluation of their ability to survive this situation. Sarah surveyed the command deck, taking in the disorder and the resolute expressions of her fellow officers. She reflected on everything the vessel and personnel represented, not merely to the Navy but to the families anticipating their homecoming. Her former experience had demonstrated that survival occasionally demanded thinking outside standard parameters. She told the captain they needed to fundamentally reconsider their strategy. These systems were failing because they attempted to function normally under abnormal circumstances. They needed to modify them to operate in harmony with the electromagnetic environment rather than opposition to it. The captain inquired what this meant practically. Sarah inhaled deeply. Her upcoming suggestion would necessitate disclosing knowledge she had maintained hidden for years, but the survival of her personnel mattered more than safeguarding her confidential information. She requested complete control over all communications and electronic systems, expressing confidence she could adjust their equipment not merely to endure this occurrence, but potentially leverage it advantageously. The command deck quieted except for warning sounds and deteriorating systems. Captain Williams examined Sarah's expression, perceiving a certainty there that transcended conventional naval preparation. He granted her authority and told her to utilize whatever resources she required. As Sarah proceeded toward the communications hub with renewed determination, she understood the genuine challenge was commencing. The electromagnetic disturbance was escalating. The vessel's systems degraded faster than repairs could address them, and somehow she needed to discover a method to preserve nearly 300 lives using knowledge from a history she had never completely revealed to anyone. Sarah navigated through the vessel purposefully, her thoughts racing through computations and alternatives that drew upon knowledge she had wished never to employ again. The electromagnetic turbulence intensified each minute, and conventional naval protocols proved ineffective against the extraordinary event. Descending into the ship's lower sections, personnel regarded her with combined optimism and urgency. She called out to Martinez as she entered the primary communications compartment, instructing him to assemble every technician with electronics background regardless of their standard assignments, and stating she required access to the vessel's central electrical distribution infrastructure. Martinez responded with tension in his voice that such access required engineering authorization. She informed him the captain had granted her complete authority and instructed him to make the necessary communications. Within moments, Sarah had gathered a team of 12 sailors possessing diverse technical capabilities. She observed their expressions, recognizing the apprehension they attempted to mask behind their professional composure. The vessel was vibrating now, not from ocean movement but from electromagnetic forces affecting their metallic structure. She began speaking, her voice penetrating the cacophony of failing systems, instructing them to listen attentively. She explained that everything they understood about electromagnetic protection and circuit defense was founded on conventional hazards, but what they confronted was different. Instead of attempting to obstruct these forces, they would redirect them. Petty Officer Jackson, a seasoned electronics specialist, raised his hand and noted that this contradicted every safety guideline they had studied, warning that channeling such energy could destroy every system aboard. Sarah concurred it was possible, but explained that inaction would result in life support loss within 60 minutes. The electromagnetic field was intensifying to a level that would overwhelm their backup systems as well. She approached a comprehensive schematic showing the vessel's electrical infrastructure. With rapid, exact movements, she began identifying specific connection locations and routes. Her familiarity with the ship's systems impressed the team, but what struck them was her apparent comprehension of the electromagnetic event itself. She explained they would establish a regulated conduit for electromagnetic energy to traverse the vessel without harming vital systems, comparing it to lightning conductors but directing energy through rather than away via designated channels they could manage. Martinez questioned how she could be certain this would succeed. Sarah hesitated, recognizing her subsequent statement would permanently alter these people's perception of her. She told them she had experience with comparable technology in circumstances she lacked authorization to reveal, and they would need to place their confidence in her. The team members glanced at each other, but another system failure elsewhere in the vessel resolved their uncertainty. They commenced working under Sarah's guidance, rearranging connections and altering circuit components using methods absent from any Navy instruction manual. Sarah's directions were exact and assured, deriving from experience that appeared to extend well beyond standard military preparation. Meanwhile, on the command deck, Captain Williams coordinated with the F-22 aviators above. The fighters struggled with their own equipment, their sophisticated computers barely maintaining steady flight in the intensifying electromagnetic field. The Falcon flight leader reported they were observing readings at altitude that didn't correspond to anything in their reference materials, noting whatever this occurrence was, it was expanding rapidly. Captain Williams acknowledged their transmission and informed them his personnel were developing a resolution, then inquired about their aircraft's condition. The pilot responded they were operating on reserve systems, and even those were becoming unreliable, noting if this continued escalating, they might need to return to their facility while still capable. Captain Williams grasped the implication. If the F-22s had to depart, the USS Defender would be isolated in whatever approached. He activated the internal communication network and requested Commander Chen's status. Sarah's voice responded immediately, though strained with focus, informing him they were initiating the final modification phase and requesting everyone not directly supporting life preservation systems to deactivate their equipment and stand ready. The captain announced throughout the vessel for all stations to prepare for emergency system deactivation and instructed all non-critical personnel to assemble in central passages and await additional directions. In the communications compartment, Sarah was completing the final connections in what resembled an improvised network of wiring and modified circuit components. Her team had operated with efficiency born from desperation, following her instructions even when they didn't completely grasp the underlying principles. Jackson nervously noted that if this proved unsuccessful, Sarah replied that they would be no worse off than doing nothing, but assured him it would function because she had observed this concept implemented previously, just never at this magnitude. She moved to a central monitoring station she had enhanced with supplementary controls and observation equipment. The electromagnetic measurements were at unprecedented levels now, and through the vessel's structure, they could perceive a low, resonating sound that seemed to emanate from the surrounding atmosphere itself. She announced throughout the ship's communication network for all stations to prepare for the electromagnetic channeling process, cautioning this might trigger temporary power variations throughout the vessel. Her hand positioned over the primary activation control, she reflected that everything relied on her calculations being accurate and on modifications that extended the ship's capabilities far beyond their engineered specifications. She briefly considered the personnel trusting her with their survival and the families awaiting their safe return home. She activated the control. Initially, nothing occurred. Then the vessel's illumination reduced as energy began traveling through the new routes Sarah had established. The resonating sound altered in tone, becoming more harmonious than menacing. Gradually, methodically, the modified electrical network began channeling electromagnetic energy in regulated sequences throughout the vessel. Martinez whispered that it was functioning, observing displays that showed energy flowing in steady, managed sequences instead of the chaotic fluctuations they had been experiencing. But Sarah wasn't completed. She proceeded to her communication station and began modifying frequencies and power settings with swift exactness, attempting to contact Falcon Flight. The Falcon Flight leader responded that they were receiving her transmission clearly and inquired how she had clarified the communications. Sarah explained they had adjusted their systems to cooperate with the electromagnetic field rather than resist it, and stated she would send them a frequency adjustment sequence. If they could modify their radio systems to correspond, they should be capable of maintaining steady communications and navigation. A pause followed from the F-22 aviators. They noted their systems weren't engineered for field alterations of that nature. Sarah smiled grimly and inquired about the Falcon flight leader's background before Air Force service. He responded he had been an electrical engineer and asked why. She told him he would then comprehend what she was preparing to explain. The electromagnetic field was generating a resonance sequence, and instead of combating it, they needed to synchronize their systems with it. Throughout the following 20 minutes, Sarah instructed the F-22 aviators through a sequence of modifications to their flight systems. Her expertise was comprehensive and precise, addressing elements of electromagnetic principles not typically included in pilot preparation. The Air Force officers found themselves implementing instructions that evidently originated from someone with profound technical knowledge. Falcon 2 reported that this was remarkable. Their navigation systems weren't merely steady, they were more precise than previously. He questioned how she knew this would succeed. Sarah answered carefully that she had experience with comparable occurrences. As the vessel's equipment stabilized, personnel throughout the ship began confirming successful equipment function. The crisis was passing, yet everyone comprehended that Sarah's modifications had preserved not merely the vessel, but potentially the survival of everyone aboard. Captain Williams arrived in the communications compartment to discover Sarah coordinating with numerous sections, ensuring all systems were appropriately integrated with her new electromagnetic management infrastructure. She appeared fatigued but concentrated, her uniform displaying evidence of the intensive work she had been performing in confined areas with electrical equipment. The captain stated quietly that he believed they needed to have a discussion about her background. Sarah glanced up from her displays and responded that she had never breached any security protocols or failed to reveal required information. The captain clarified he wasn't challenging her integrity, but what she had achieved here extended far beyond conventional Navy preparation. The modification she had implemented, the expertise she had demonstrated, this wasn't something acquired in communications officer training. Before Sarah could answer, the radio transmitted a new message from the F-22s. The Falcon flight leader announced they were receiving instructions to escort them to coordinates that would be sent separately, noting their command wanted to debrief whoever determined how to convert this electromagnetic disturbance into a navigation benefit. Sarah felt her anxiety intensify. She had wished to prevent attention from superior command levels, but rescuing the vessel had rendered that impossible. The technical knowledge she had revealed would certainly prompt inquiries from individuals with elevated security permissions. She acknowledged understanding and stated they were prepared to receive coordinates. As the new heading information arrived, Sarah recognized their destination wasn't a conventional naval facility. The coordinates specified an installation she identified from her former profession, a location where questions would be posed that she couldn't evade answering. The vessel began altering course, its systems now operating more efficiently than they had in months due to Sarah's modifications. The electromagnetic disturbance was beginning to diminish, but the consequences of what had transpired would be experienced much longer. The captain stated that whatever her background was, she had rescued this vessel and personnel today, but he suspected this was merely the commencement of something more significant. Sarah acknowledged, observing the F-22s maintain their escort configuration overhead. She had successfully executed the ship-wide rescue, but in doing so, she had disclosed capabilities that would unavoidably lead to inquiries about her history. The electromagnetic disturbance had concluded, but she perceived that a different form of turbulence was preparing to commence. As the USS Defender sailed toward its new destination under F-22 supervision, personnel throughout the vessel conversed in subdued tones about what they had observed. Their communications coordinator had revealed knowledge and abilities that seemed to originate from a vastly different realm than the Navy they recognized. And shortly everyone would discover precisely how different that realm had been. The USS Defender neared the coordinates supplied by the F-22 escorts as sunset began over the Pacific. What had commenced as a standard training operation had evolved into something that would be examined in classified conferences for years ahead. Sarah stood on the command deck, observing their destination materialize on the skyline, a facility that revived recollections she had attempted to leave in her past. Commander Davis, studying the approaching coastline through field glasses, identified it as Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake and questioned what they would want with a vessel's communications coordinator. Captain Williams glanced at Sarah, detecting the tension in her stance, and stated he expected they were preparing to discover. The F-22s had sustained their escort configuration throughout the voyage, their aviators maintaining professional radio exchanges, but clearly intrigued about the peculiar assignment they had received. As they neared the naval station, supplementary aircraft materialized in the atmosphere. Additional F-22s, along with some aircraft that Sarah identified as experimental models not typically observed by conventional Navy personnel. China Lake Control transmitted a new voice over the radio, clearing them for approach to Pier 7 and noting a debriefing contingent would be awaiting. As the vessel maneuvered into location, Sarah could observe a small assembly of individuals waiting on the pier. Even from distance, she could determine they were not standard Navy personnel. Their demeanor and the manner they observed the approaching vessel indicated intelligence or specialized operations backgrounds. Captain Williams stated quietly that before they docked, he needed to question her directly about her exact background before the Navy. Sarah had anticipated this moment would eventually arrive. The electromagnetic incident had compelled her to employ knowledge and abilities that couldn't be clarified by her official service documentation. She regarded the approaching pier, then returned her gaze to her commanding officer. She informed him she had been involved in a classified aerospace initiative from 2018 to 2021. The specifics exceeded her authorization level to reveal, but the technical expertise she utilized today originated from that experience. The captain inquired what kind of aerospace initiative. Sarah answered it involved advanced aircraft creation and evaluation, but stated she couldn't elaborate further without appropriate authorization. As the vessel completed docking operations, Sarah could observe the debriefing contingent more distinctly. She identified two individuals from her former profession, Colonel Matthews from Air Force Special Projects and Dr. Sarah Mitchell from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Their attendance validated her suspicions about why they had been transported to China Lake. The debriefing occurred in a protected conference space within the Naval Station's administrative structure. Present were Captain Williams, Sarah, Colonel Matthews, Dr. Mitchell, and a Navy intelligence representative who introduced himself simply as Commander Johnson. Through the space's viewports, Sarah could observe the F-22 aviators from their escort assignment walking across the airfield toward the structure. Colonel Matthews initiated by stating that her actions today had generated some intriguing questions. The electromagnetic management method she had implemented was remarkably comparable to classified technologies created in initiatives she was previously connected with. Sarah confirmed she had modified concepts she acquired during her time in the Blackbird initiative. Dr. Mitchell leaned forward, noting that the adjustments she had made to both the vessel's systems and the F-22 flight systems demonstrated a level of comprehension that exceeded theoretical knowledge. She had evidently possessed practical experience with comparable technology. Sarah confirmed that was accurate. Commander Johnson referenced his documentation, noting that according to her service documentation, she had transferred directly from the Air Force to the Navy without any interruption in service. The Blackbird initiative officially terminated in 2021, which corresponded with her transfer date. That was correct. Captain Williams, who had been listening intently, interjected that with all due consideration, he was more concerned with what this signified for his vessel and personnel going forward. He emphasized that Commander Chen had preserved nearly 300 lives today using unconventional approaches. Dr. Mitchell replied that they comprehended that, but the ramifications of what transpired today extended beyond his vessel. The electromagnetic occurrence they encountered wasn't entirely natural. The space fell quiet. Sarah felt her pulse accelerate. If the electromagnetic occurrence had been artificial, it indicated possibilities she didn't wish to contemplate. Captain Williams questioned whether she was stating this was some form of examination or assault. Colonel Matthews replied they were still investigating, but the frequency characteristics and power levels corresponded to theoretical projections for electromagnetic warfare systems that multiple nations had been creating. A knock sounded at the conference space entrance, and the two F-22 aviators from the escort assignment entered. Both remained in their flight gear, their expressions displaying a combination of curiosity and professional interest. The lead aviator stated they had been requested to speak with them following their debriefing. Colonel Matthews confirmed, stating he wanted them to meet the individual who helped resolve their flight systems issues during the electromagnetic occurrence. The aviators regarded Sarah with interest. Major Thompson extended his hand and expressed that they owed her considerable gratitude, adding that what she accomplished for their systems was exceptional, and he was curious about her technical background. Sarah accepted his handshake, noting the assured grip of a seasoned aviator. She expressed her satisfaction at being helpful. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez added that the frequency adjustment method she had instructed them on wasn't in any of their technical documentation, and questioned where she had acquired such knowledge. Dr. Mitchell interrupted, suggesting they should commence with appropriate introductions and requesting that Commander Chen inform these officers about her prior assignment. Sarah surveyed the space, understanding that her carefully preserved privacy was preparing to completely conclude. She stated she had been a test aviator and systems engineer in the Air Force's Blackbird initiative from 2018 to 2021. Major Thompson raised an eyebrow, questioning the Blackbird initiative and noting he believed that was merely speculation and rumors. Colonel Matthews validated it was very authentic and noted that Commander Chen was one of their most experienced test aviators before transferring to the Navy. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez examined Sarah's expression more attentively and hesitated, noting that if she was in the Blackbird initiative, she would have possessed a call sign, and questioning what her call sign was. The inquiry hung in the atmosphere like a provocation. Sarah had wished to prevent this moment, but she could perceive there was no method to circumvent it now. Her call sign had been celebrated in certain communities, recognized to every serious aviator in the experimental aircraft field. She stated quietly that her call sign was Ghost. The impact on the two F-22 aviators was immediate and significant. Major Thompson's expression actually dropped open, while Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez stepped backward as though he had been physically impacted. They regarded Sarah in complete silence for multiple seconds. Major Thompson finally whispered, questioning if she was Ghost. The Ghost who piloted the Aurora assignments, who established the altitude record in the X-43 variant. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez added, his voice containing admiration, questioning if she set the velocity record that remained classified. Sarah acknowledged, uncomfortable with the recognition, but unable to contradict facts that were evidently familiar to these aviators. Dr. Mitchell interjected, inquiring if they were familiar with Commander Chen's reputation. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez replied that every aviator in the Air Force knew about Ghost, noting the accounts. They believed some of them had to be embellished. Major Thompson questioned regarding Sarah directly if piloting a prototype aircraft at Mach 6 through a thunderstorm to evaluate electromagnetic protection was accurate. Sarah validated that one was authentic and stated it was directly connected to what she accomplished today. The electromagnetic management concepts were identical. Colonel Matthews cleared his throat, noting this was precisely why they required this debriefing. Commander Chen's background rendered her distinctively qualified to comprehend what transpired during today's incident. Captain Williams regarded Sarah with renewed admiration, stating he was beginning to comprehend why she appeared so composed during the emergency. She had confronted circumstances like this previously. Sarah replied that they were comparable but not identical, noting today's electromagnetic occurrence was more powerful than anything she experienced during test flights. Dr. Mitchell extracted a classified document and opened it cautiously, noting this brought them to their genuine concern. The electromagnetic profile from today corresponded to theoretical estimates for a weapon infrastructure called Project Stormfront, which intelligence indicated was being created by hostile nations. Captain Williams questioned if she was stating they were assaulted. Colonel Matthews replied they didn't believe it was an assault. More probably, it was an examination of the infrastructure, and their vessel happened to be in the incorrect location at the incorrect time. Major Thompson was still regarding Sarah, expressing he had to question about the Aurora initiative, the X-43 variants, the classified altitude records. How much of that technology was incorporated into current F-22 systems? Sarah replied that some of it was, noting the frequency adjustment methods she instructed them on today were directly derived from systems she evaluated in 2020. Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez muttered that this was unbelievable. They had been piloting aircraft that incorporated technology she helped create, and they never realized it. Commander Johnson finally contributed, noting this raised security questions that needed to be addressed. He stated that Commander Chen's transition to the Navy was authorized at the superior levels, but her current assignment might need to be reconsidered. Captain Williams asked sharply what he meant. Dr. Mitchell explained that someone with Commander Chen's background and expertise represented a substantial security resource. The question was whether she was most valuable, continuing her current responsibilities or returning to specialized initiatives. Sarah had been anticipating this possibility. Her time in the Navy had provided her a sense of normalcy that she valued profoundly. The prospect of returning to the high-pressure, highly classified realm of experimental aircraft wasn't attractive. She stated with respect that she preferred her current assignment. Dr. Mitchell noted that today demonstrated that her specialized expertise could preserve lives in ways that conventional preparation couldn't. Colonel Matthews pointed out that her actions preserved not merely her vessel, but supplied crucial intelligence about potential hazards to national security. Major Thompson advanced, stating he didn't know if it was suitable for him to express this, but it was a privilege to have collaborated with her today, even remotely. The reputation she obtained in the test aviator community was celebrated. Sarah thanked him but expressed hope he comprehended why she preferred to concentrate on her current responsibilities rather than past accomplishments. He responded that of course he understood, but today demonstrated that the past and present sometimes converge in unexpected ways. The meeting proceeded for another hour with discussions about security protocols, potential reassignments, and the ongoing investigation into the electromagnetic occurrence. Throughout it all, the two F-22 aviators remained somewhat in reverence of finding themselves in the identical space as someone whose achievements had become celebrated in their community. As the debriefing concluded, Major Thompson approached Sarah one final time, stating he knew this might sound peculiar, but questioned if she would be willing to sign something for him. He explained he had a nephew who aspired to be an aviator, and knowing that Ghost personally assisted them today would mean a lot to him. Sarah smiled, the first genuinely relaxed expression she had displayed all day. She stated, of course, but suggested they just keep it between them, that Ghost was now serving as a Navy communications coordinator, noting some transitions were better left private. He responded that he understood completely. As they prepared to return to the USS Defender, Sarah understood that her carefully maintained confidential identity was now familiar to more individuals than she was comfortable with. But regarding the respect in the expressions of her fellow officers and remembering the lives that had been preserved that day, she accepted that some confidential information was worth disclosing when the circumstances were sufficiently critical. The electromagnetic disturbance had concluded, but Sarah Chen, call sign Ghost, knew that her quiet service in the Navy would never be quite the same.